today I'm going to be providing kind of an overview of some of the research the BBB's done relative to building a culture of character and developing trust within the community for your organization. And then we never want it to just be kind of, oh, I learned a few nice things on a webinar. I'm going to actually switch over from a presentation and take you to a workbook and kind of walk you through that and tell a few stories relative to how the BBB itself has utilized it, as well as some corporations, so that you can, and then we'll provide that to you free of charge. We'll get Natalie to send that out to everybody that registered. And so feel free at the end to kind of ask questions as to how might I integrate this into my organization? How might I actually challenge ourselves to carry out some of these different areas? So again, I grew up in Central Ohio. I spent 3 years down in Florida after college, and worked for the Better Business Bureau, and then decided I wanted to come back to Central Ohio, and started with the Central Ohio BBB almost 30 years ago. And I love working with businesses and telling their stories and elevating their trust practices that they take pride in. So, you know, this idea that trust builds better businesses, it's kind of like, yeah, I get that. That's kind of a basic statement. You know, most people would say, I believe in that, but they don't really understand that there's all the different ramifications that need to take place in order for that trust to be built, not only within the organization, but also built within the community, so that you can reach a place of marketplace trust. So I'm going to kind of walk you through, in this deck here, I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the concept of all that has to take place, all the different variables that come into play, so you understand kind of the full scope of how do you build trust within your organization and the community. And so the BBB, again, mission is to promote the highest standards of business ethics and conduct in the marketplace. So how do we go about doing that? So what we did was we started with, in 1994, I was talking to a lot of businesses, and they were saying, just like you heard, they're saying, you know, I don't need your complaint handling services. I've got a department that handles complaints. I remember I visited Limited back in the 90s, and we handled a lot of complaints for the Limited. And they said, we handle, you know, a lot more of our own complaints than you handle for us. And, you know, and then other businesses said, I don't get complaints. So, you know, I don't need the Better Business Bureau. And it would frustrate me, because I'd say, I don't need your complaints either. You know, we want businesses that that adhere to the principles of the BBB and to kind of elevate our community. So in 1994, came back to our board of directors, and that's when we started what was known as the Business Integrity Awards. It became the Torch Award for Ethics. And the idea behind that was so that we could showcase within our community of 21 counties, this is what really good business practices look like. These are the characteristics of an organization that's intentional about carrying out these principles. And when I say these principles, we didn't have all the answers. We wanted to learn from the businesses in the community. So over the years, we kind of set up some different buckets of things that we were looking for. We used independent outside leaders to do the evaluation and assessment. And every year since, we've fine-tuned it, and we've gotten feedback, and we've heard from these business leaders relative to, well, it would be nice to see if the business would be give us examples of how they've been intentional within their organization to carry out a culture of high character. And so we started asking for that information and started getting really rich data. Then we started, in 2000, we decided that we'd start our Center for Character Ethics, which was a 501c3 foundation, so that we could do a little bit more research around these principles and and be able to kind of understand, can we move the needle? Are there ways that we can not only define them and celebrate them, but then can we define them in such a way that businesses could utilize them moving forward? And so the first one that we came to obviously was character. We recognized early on that that not only primarily the focus was on leadership. So you have to have a leader of high character in order to take the next step of developing a culture of high character. And so we spent a lot of time, and in the workbook that I'll show you after this short presentation, I'll show you some different tools that we utilize to start having the conversation around character and what leadership character actually stands for. And it's really built around, you know, is an individual intentional about having some sort of a framework? We've got a framework that we share with you with 20 leadership character principles that are defined, that you are welcome to use. But some people say, we've already got our framework, or we've gone through strategic planning sessions and we've developed kind of our word cloud that these are the things that we are really focused on, and we've defined them, and we hold people accountable to them. And so character is one where studies have shown that, and I'm sure if you look back at instances where you've had to let people go, we feel that 99% of the time you've let somebody go because of character issues, not because of competency issues. And so if that's the case, then we talk a lot about, one, understanding character, two, embedding character into every aspect of your organization in terms of what you stand for, your team dynamics, how you go about communicating within your teams. If you have board of directors, how you communicate with your board of directors, and you set that standard so that there's a clear understanding. Then we've taken it even further, and I'll talk more about this in the next phase of this, but we've taken it even further where we've embedded this into our hiring practices. And so, you know, we have one coming up here shortly that, you know, there's an individual that that probably didn't have the rich background for the competency of what we were looking for, but the character was coming through loud and clear. And so we were feeling, okay, we can always train somebody, but we want to make sure that we don't make a bad hire because we hire for the competency, and we haven't really seen whether we can the character is going to align with our culture. So that's really kind of number one key, character. I'll talk about some stories relative to that on some of the workshops that I've done. But so in this grid that you'll see me build out here, leadership character is at the core, the center. It has to be addressed first and foremost. One of the stories is I was doing a workshop, and we did workshops for being a leader of character, and then we did workshops on developing a culture of character. And this one came first, and then the culture came second. And we had two individuals come to one of them that were with the same organization. One was the leader, one was in another position. And she got back to me after the first workshop and said, phenomenal, I got so much out of it. It's changed my life. And I said, well, I've never heard that one of our workshops has changed your life. So tell me a little bit about why you say that. And she said, I quit my job. And I said, oh, I didn't think that was going to be the outcome of the workshop. She goes, no, what I had been going through, I recognized that exactly what you were saying relative to the leadership character, that they were not going to change. And I was stuck in a position that we were never going to get to the next level of having a conversation of developing a culture of character, because we had really a problem leader that wasn't going to address those issues. So that's how important it is. That's how critical it is moving forward. So then the second one is obviously is, you know, if you've got a leader that's focused on it and that is transparent and is intentional about wanting to improve, because we all fall short. None of us have arrived, and so it's a work in progress. So if you've got somebody that has that type of approach to their leadership, then the next phase obviously is, okay, can we build out a culture? Can we develop an atmosphere within our organization where people not only get along, but they all operate with respect, with transparency, with honesty, servant leadership? Are the teams functioning appropriately, because the expectation is that no one's going to feel demeaned, or everybody's going to have an opportunity to speak their voice. So culture is that next area. And when you talk about culture, then you get to kind of the next phase of development for an organization. And all of this, you'll see in a minute, is leading towards marketplace trust. So how do you get to the point where you can feel a little bit more comfortable with marketplace trust? So once you arrive at the employee trust, and they, you know, if they really understand and want to support the organization, then and they would, if asked, on a scale of 1 to 10, you know, consider the Net Promoter Score. If you were to ask your employees, would you recommend your own company to somebody else to either work there or do business with them? If they're, you know, in the 5 to 7 range, then you've got work to do. If they're below 5, you've got a problem employee that's going to pull you down. If you've got an 8, 9, or 10, then you've probably got somebody that's a champion, but still has improvement in terms of whether they're going to help take you to the next level. So this next level of employee trust, if you work at it, what it's going to provide more creativity within your teams, lower turnover, positive relationships, and productivity. All things that you want out of your team. You know, positive relationships, oftentimes in those workshops, we would hear people, and sometimes they'd bring it up in the leadership workshop, they'd say, this is great, but how do I deal with the problem employee? You know, the employee that everybody else is coming to me about and telling me that, you know, they're acting this way, or their behavior's this way, or their, you know, their character's this way. This speaks to being intentional around the expectations for your employees. So then what we looked at was the next phase was the customers. So you've got the leadership, you've got the culture. Okay, obviously the next stage is you want to build trust with your customers, and then we also say your vendors, because those are the relationships outside your organization that you want vendors to understand that that you're a company they can trust, and vice versa. So this area of customer feedback, we built into this customer side of the equation. The BBB did a research project that we actually house on our Institute for Marketplace Trust. It's called the 5 Gestures of Trust, and it's also free resources. You can go to you can Google 5 Gestures of Trust, and there's the whole white papers up there, and it basically will help you understand from a customer's perspective, what are the behaviors and character traits that are they looking for in order to build trust with them? What do they want a company to look and feel like when they do business? So it could have everything to do with the way they present, from a sales perspective, to their advertising, to their first interaction on the phone. What do they want? What are the most important things that they want to feel in order to build that trust? And so it's critical to understand that, and it's critical to carry that out at the front lines all the way through the organization. But once you have been intentional in this area of customer vendor trust, you see referrals committed partners, supported vendors, satisfied customers, and what we all love is repeat business. You want to build those relationships so that they come back to you because they've experienced something that they have been looking for, and they don't want to risk going someplace else and finding out that they've lost it, or they've understood that it takes time and they've developed that trust, and so they want to make sure they keep that. So again, this is kind of the rubric of how intentional you need to be in these various areas. So then we added the community. The community in the early days of the early 90s, when we were really building out what a torch award for ethics represents, the community was, the component was when we went out and we'd shoot videos at their offices, and so they'd always want to, okay, oh yeah, shoot my wall where I've got my membership plaques, and I've got you know, our involvement with a nonprofit, and since then, in the last 20 years, as you probably recognize, that's fantastic. That's kind of the baseline. But I think what consumers and future employees are looking for is to really better understand your organization in terms of, again, the culture, but also the heart of what you stand for. So the BBB has a whole project built around this community called BBB for Good that tries to collect the information relative to a business's interest. So if a business says we're a social enterprise, and so we specifically are built around a particular cause within the community, and you know, buy one, you know, give one away, whatever the model is for a social enterprise, then they can display that, or they're they have developed within their strategic planning that they want to be involved in the community, and so they have different things that they specifically support, or they're set up as a nonprofit, or they have labeled themselves a conscious capitalist, and they fall into the realm of understanding the role and responsibility of that everything across our platform is going to be measured against its impact on the community. So you've got lots of different areas that community can be addressed and assessed as you move forward, which makes it fun because it's you know, it's an area that helps build trust and helps them appreciate all that you do. So then, kind of, this is the ultimate. You want to get to marketplace trust. Once you've carried out all of these intentional aspects of building out your business, what you're trying to do ultimately is you want to have a superior reputation. You want to have great performance. You want to have business growth. One of the most interesting ones is this forgiveness for mistakes. So, you know, I've used the story about Jenny's Ice Cream because, you know, they had reached marketplace trust. They were held up as one of the, you know, companies that does support the community. They were recognized as being a wonderful place to work. Their leadership spoke highly of a lot of these principles and so forth. And then they have the Listeria case and an issue that comes up. And so I was sitting back thinking, okay, this is going to be important because how they address that and how they bounce back from that is going to support this model. And they did. They came out and they handled it transparently, professionally, and they got some positive press relative to that. I think they had a second instance, which was even tougher for them to address, and they came back from that. And again, they would not have been able to come back from that if they did not have marketplace trust. If their employees were disgruntled, they probably would have had people bailing on them. and they would not have had an understanding of how they needed to address that. So it's just an example of the importance of reaching this arena of marketplace trust. And again, as we all know, we all have different KPIs and ways to measure that, with it, whether it's retention rate with associations, or feedback survey tools and so forth. But it is critical to try to measure that with your customers. But what we say is that it's critical to measure that with your employees. So we actually are creating, we're in the 3.0 phase of a very intense employee assessment tool we call BBB Trust Score. And what we've done is we actually have developed around 30 questions that you would ask your employees, and 5 or 6 per area. So you've got 5 or 6 for the character, 5 or 6 for the customer and community, and then it pulls together a report for the leadership team to take a look at your culture within your organization. So if you have a situation where you get the feedback and you say, okay, in character and culture, we're at a 4.8 out of 5, or in this case, we've changed the scale. If you have a 8 or 9 out of 10, boy, we're doing some things really, really well. And then you see that in the community, you've dropped down to a 5. Then you can have those conversations with your team relative to, why is that? What can we do differently in order to try to raise that score up? And I'll give a short example of what we did as when the BBB took it within our staff. We've taken it every year for the last 4 or 5 years. And one of the instances that came back was that on the community side, we kind of had always rested on the fact that we're a nonprofit and our mission is our community involvement. And our staff came back and said, well, we really don't do anything with our nonprofits that we care so much about, and we don't really rally around that. We really would like to have an involvement in the community. So we addressed it by putting together a committee that would kind of take a look at what that would look like and how we would involve all our employees in a project that would help support a nonprofit within the community. Much to my chagrin, they called me in the office as they were meeting and said, we've come up with our first project. And I said, well, okay, what would that be? And they said, you're going to rappel down the PNC building for the Central Ohio Youth for Christ and their Grace Haven to help support individuals that have been sex trafficked. And so they chose a cause that they felt passionate about. We rallied around, and they had no problem rallying around trying to throw me off the PNC building. But we raised money for the charity and became close friends with that nonprofit and have done numerous things with them since. And our score went up. We got involvement with everybody. We had an event that they actually could come to. We had fun with it. We learned a lot about the cause, and it elevated the employees' perception and feeling relative to the BBB's commitment in the community. So that's just one example of how we utilize the trust score. I can give you a few more after we get into the other pieces of the puzzle. So in the end, when trust rises, business soars, and businesses and communities grow. We really think that this is true. We spend an enormous amount of time, more so on building better businesses. We understand that the side of our business that has 2 million people coming to our website to check on businesses that they can trust and even during the pandemic, we've had record numbers of people coming to the site. We also have record numbers of complaints and reviews. So everything's up because consumers can't afford to make bad decisions, and because they want to have a better understanding. They have more. They realize they have more access to that information. So that's always going to take place. But we really feel the next generation of the Better Business Bureau is building the better businesses. How can we work with chambers of commerce? How can we provide resources to help lift up the members of the chambers and showcase the same things that we're showcasing with these principles? We know there's wonderful businesses that we want to showcase, and we want to showcase them through the Chambers platform and the BUV's platform. So we love collaboration and we love partnerships, and moving forward, we hope to do more of that. So let me switch over and just, if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them while I switch over. See where we're at for time. Okay. So I'll keep going. So what we've done is, so that's kind of the theory behind it. That's kind of the what we've learned over the years. That's kind of built out in terms of this is why we feel it's important. This is why we convey to you the importance of it. Ultimately, it's hard work. You have to be intentional about it, but it's not a soft skill. These are skills that if you go back to your company and say, I think we should try to integrate some of these, you'd be doing them not to feel good, but you'd be doing them because you're building an organization that you are going to spend less time in a stressful environment and less time struggling for your strategic plan to come to life, and less time with squabbles amongst employees, and you're going to have a clearer understanding of how you deal with issues and problems within your organization, because you've set the table for how you deal with those types of instances. So as I stated earlier, I wanted to walk you through this booklet, and this is going to be made available to you in a PDF form. If you need them printed out, we can also print them out. If you plan on doing some sort of a small leadership team exercise, we can print these for you free of charge and provide them to you. We do that in-house. But this is a booklet that we put together that is all the resources and all the tools that we've utilized to try to bring what I just presented the last half hour to life. And we not only provide the resources, but we kind of tell the story in this book of why. And so it helps you, if you have a leadership team, you can get them to rally around the importance of this. When we first kicked this off and used some of these tools, we went to the leadership team and we had conversations, and we had a couple issues with some of the some individuals on our leadership team. And when I say issues, I mean people would come to me and say, this person's door is closed, I can't seem to go to them, I need this done. I'm usually treated with a, kind of a stern, look, and you're bothering me type mentality. And so what we did was we asked all of the leadership team, well, let me take a step back. So the importance of it is to get better performance, loyal employees, higher levels of productivity, greater levels of innovation, a competitive advantage, and attract and retain excellent employees. So again, I want to hammer the point that these are not soft skills. These are skills that are going to advance your business. And again, describing some of the back end of why it's important, that helps you explain that to some of your team members. Excuse me. So getting back to what I was sharing, so in this story, we shared this leadership character framework that we call Uncommon Sense. It's broken into 4 different areas: principled and genuine, values others, seeks results, and displays growth. Because again, what we want to do is we want to define what these principles mean and stand for. We want to give you a structure as to why they're important. So some of them are just plain principled and genuine in their makeup. Others are really focused around the valuing others within your organization. But then again, some are about, if you have these in place, you're seeking results. You want your KPIs to be addressed. You want your teams to be maximized so that they can develop your strategic plan. So what this provides is definitions around this framework. So we, as a leadership team, said, yes, we want to endorse this framework. Ultimately, we did it with our leadership team, then we did it with our staff, then we did it with our board of directors, and then we actually published this in the Columbus Dispatch and got feedback from dozens of businesses and individuals that supported what these stand for. Because if you think about everything that's going on in our community right now, and if you read through these, I think you will get a sense that if we all acted more intentionally in these areas, we could all have better conversations and better relationships. But talks about seeking wisdom, what trustworthiness really means. So many of these are thrown around, and with the assumption that you know what it means, and the one word is good enough. So integrity. Oh yeah, I have high integrity. I do what I say I'm going to do. Typical examples: people seek to do the right things in all situations. People do not take the easy way out of assignments. They make every effort to accomplish the task. When promises cannot be kept, those affected are informed in advance and corrective actions are taken. I mean, think about that one alone. How many times does trust get broken down within team members when someone says, I'm going to deliver on this, and then they don't deliver on it? If they don't take the step of saying, hey, listen, I failed. I know you've been waiting on this for me. I'll make a commitment to get that to you. You build that relationship back up. You can just ask Jess, who knows that she's probably waiting for 3 things from me right now that I promised her. And I promise, Jess, I will get those to you. And if they say it will be done, you can count on it. So, and it opens up the door to say, okay, if this is the expectation, and you've said to me you will get it to me, then you cannot be afraid to reapproach that and say, the understanding is that you told me I'd have this by Monday, and it's now the following Wednesday. Is there a reason? Is there something I can do to help? Can we set a new timetable? Whatever it is, those are conversations that need to be had. But if you are operating with a clear understanding of what the definitions are, it helps immensely. Respect. High character people treat others as they would want to be treated. Treat with dignity. Absence of prejudice or personal favorites. People make others feel important through eye contact and listening for both meaning and understanding. This kind of, what it does is it builds out the definitions to showcase how they can be actionable within an organization and a team to help build trust. I'm not going to go through all of them. I've done 3-hour workshops at Ohio State with master's program individuals, and we actually have them do some own personal assessments and have them break out and talk about some of these. We've done some of that with our staff. So there's ways that this can be done more fully. We did get some feedback from a number of businesses that say this is so in depth. I don't know how I would like really get everybody to kind of read this and fully understand it. So we created the leadership character framework at a glance, so you can simplify it a little bit and have the quick and easy definitions. You can take a look at it and as an organization say, do I agree with this? Are there things within this that we could add to our word cloud, that we could add to our strategic plan? Have we struggled with bringing our plan to life because of accountability or because of compassion for others? You know, whatever it might be, you need to figure out what might be slowing you down and then develop some ways to integrate that within your organization. The booklet also has a leadership character self-assessment, and this is really built around, you know, asking individuals to walk through these. And, you know, I like to point out the one for honesty, because if you ask any one of your employees, are you honest? I think you're probably going to get the answer, well, of course I'm honest. So the simple answer is I strive to consistently speak the truth with compassion. But then this gives a little bit of a rubric so that people can understand that honesty can take on a lot of different traits depending on kind of where you're coming from. So the centered honesty would be you're truthful, straightforward, discreet, discerning, and precise. But then you can have a negative traits on one side of it where you're actually, you think you're honest, but it's because you're blunt, harsh, brutal, and crass. And then on the other side, you might think you're honest, but you're actually deceptive, manipulative, and vague. So if someone sees you in these left or right quadrants, then they're going to think you're not honest. So this is a self-assessment tool. When we did things with Ohio State, and we also did it with the Defense Finance and Accounting departments, and we asked them to work on this. We had them break up into groups, one-on-one with another individual, and we asked them to just share, you know, one or two areas that they feel like they excelled in, that they felt others really saw them as a leader in this area, and then where they saw some where they said, you know, okay, I've kind of always known that I'm a little blunt and harsh with my honesty, and you have that conversation around that. Values others, seeks results, gets into accountability, courage. I strive to persistently act on my strong convictions. Seeking counsel, stewardship, responsibility, excellence, and then displaying growth around transformation. I strive to demonstrate consistently improving positive high character. So this idea of taking somebody on a path for improvement. So that is a tool that can be used on developing individual character within your organization, with your leadership teams, with your staff. We shared it with our board of directors. The understanding would be that you know, you're going to hold somebody accountable if they're operating outside of the confines of the framework that you've set up for the organization. And then you get into the team and you say, okay, well then how do I then take it to the next level? So we have conversations to share and explore the leadership character framework with others. We have tenets for building your own character. So you can have, again, it's a little bit of a self-assessment. I possess teachable spirit. It's kind of laying out there, okay, what does it mean to really be intentional in this area? Can I check these off? Can I agree that I'm making a commitment in these areas? We develop an action plan. We jump you into culture. I'm moving kind of fast because we're coming up on 9:15, but I wanted to make sure that you understood that we actually have actionable items that you can utilize to build this out within your organization. If you need help doing it, we can come into your organization free of charge and help walk through a senior leadership team or have a conversation around an entire organization. That's what we want to be there for you. So we do the same thing with developing the culture. We talk about it with the customers. And so then the interesting thing is that the questions that are associated with, consider internal practices your organization uses to better build customer relationships. We're honest with our customers. We have a good reputation with our customers because we proactively address their problems or issues. These, not all of them, but most of these are questions that we ask within the trust score. And so sometimes you'll look at these and you'll say, well, yeah, we're transparent when dealing with customers and we provide information we don't have to share. If you ask your employees feedback on that, it'll be interesting what you'll find. You'll get feedback that will force you to have the conversations moving forward. I'll give an example, and then again on community. This is a tool to kind of talk through assessing where you are currently and assessing where you want to become, and then giving some ideas on how to get there. We also, on the website, we're building out some of the examples of the Torch Award for Ethics. Why did they receive that award? Well, they were very intentional in these different areas. And then you can see some really creative ideas on how they engage their customers, how they engage their employees, how they work with their leadership, how they embed all of the different principles into their organization. So I'm gonna do a wrap up, telling a little bit of a story about one of our biggest champions of this whole model and this whole understanding, and it's Heartland Bank. So Heartland Bank was really passionate about our Center for Character Ethics and what we were presenting. And Scott McComb began utilizing our trust assessment tool. And it was really a 1.0 product. We really needed to take it to another level. When I went to take it to another level, I went back to him and I said, listen, I'd love to hear your story and we'd love to do kind of a story around it. And he says, well, I've been doing it now every 6 months. And I said, well, what's your experience around that? And he tells this elaborate story about how, they do the assessment and then they get the results and then they give it to their leadership team. And then he says, I tell my leadership team, I give it to them on a Friday. I tell them to go home, have a drink, kick the dog, because you're going to be frustrated over some of the responses because you think you've been really intentional about operating in all these areas, but get it out of your system, because when we come back on Monday, we're going to meet with the team and we're going to have conversations around this, and we're going to make sure that we embed this into our plan for the following year, and we're going to make improvements. And then what he found was, okay, and then what becomes frustrating is you make improvements in one area and you realize that another area has dropped off. So you've never arrived. You have to be intentional in these areas. You start to recognize that you might have 10 or 15% that are really digging in on some of these issues and really giving low scores. And you don't know who's giving you the data, but you have to understand that you've got some individuals that have to be dealt with on teams because they're not walking in lockstep with your organization. And the vision for how you want to be seen in the community. And I actually, I was on the board for the Institute for Marketplace Trust in DC, and we were working on this project, and the executive director of the Association of Military Bankers of America was also on the board with me. And he said, I want you to come give a presentation on this and the trust score at our annual convention, which just so happened was at the Watergate Hotel, which was kind of interesting, talking about ethics at the Watergate Hotel. But and I said, well, what are you trying to accomplish? What, you know, do you really think that some of these big banks are, you know, even have an ear for this? And he said, everything on our conference is about compliance. It's all about the compliance areas, and they spend 99% of their time on compliance. And so they're going to have people from the FTC, they're going to have people from CFPB, they're going to have all these different people talking about these rules and regulations and everything that's coming down the pike. But he says most of the big stories you've heard of where people have fallen short are around character. Their character issues within their organization, their culture issues. And he says, and I've got to get them to understand that they need to change the culture, or the competency and compliance areas are never going to be realized. So we did that. We might be partnering with them on the trust score, but it just showcased somebody that realizes at the level where banks have so much compliance that they're addressing, but they're not taking the time to focus on character and culture within their organization. And so it was eye-opening to me as well. And we had one other instance. We had a long-standing accredited business that had an instance with an employee that did not do their job relative to licensing and reporting the licenses on products, and it had to do with the EPA. And you probably heard about it, but the bottom line was they ended up spending $30–40 million to address the issues. They had the EPA was in their offices for over a year. They had all sorts of compliance issues to address. We had suspended them from accreditation, and they wanted to appeal, and they came in with their high-powered attorneys from Boyer Saders, Seymour and Pease, and their chief ethics officer, and some outside, some internal attorneys, and they were presenting, and everything they were presenting was speaking to the fact that they had a breakdown in their culture, and the compliance issue was so minor, and yet the EPA was going to be in there for a year to make sure that, you know, that was never going to take place again. So after we got done with the meeting, their chief ethics officer, we have all the 6 principles that are related to this up on our wall in our conference room. And he pulls me aside and he goes, can you tell me a little bit about this? And so I gave him a quick summary, and he kind of shook his head. He goes, yeah, I don't spend enough time on that. Because he's working on the compliance issues. So, you know, I tell the story because, you know, there's only so much time in a day, but, you know, if you say over the course of the next year that you are going to be intentional about working through some of these models and trying to get to a next level in all of these different quadrants, I think you'll look back on your organization and say, wow, that played a really big part in helping our organization grow. And I'm more comfortable. I don't feel like I'm spending as much time on disgruntledness or behavior issues. I'm dealing with character issues, and we all know it. And so we're all communicating along those lines. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. I hope it's been informative. I think it's, you know, it is one of those that the takeaway is going to really be that booklet to kind of take a look at, is there 1 or 2 things that you can go back to your organization and try to implement